Am I on here? Welcome everybody. Am I on? Everybody can hear? Here we go. We're lighting up. Thank you. Well, we have a nice crowd here. What a wonderful crowd to see here. My senator's here keeping an eye on me today, Senator Jeff Edler. We have Representative Cindy Winkler here and Representative Beth Wessel-Crosell here. So thank you all for coming. We really appreciate that. And we had communication from legislators up at Cedar Falls, and I expect that we will have some of that again today. So thanks for coming. We will get started. I've got just a short presentation here. Good morning and welcome to the second of 3 Board of Regents Tuition Task Force public meetings. The Board is holding these meetings to facilitate public discussion examining core issues and strategies central to the process of setting tuition at Iowa's public universities. All sessions are open to the public. Audio to each also will be live streamed and archived on the Board's website. And I had several emails and calls from folks that did watch it and communicated with me back at my office after seeing that. So I'm very hopeful that, again, at Iowa State University, we are being watched by folks all over the state. This is my first time in 4 years on the Board that we are taking a comprehensive look at our tuition model and structure. It is time to be proactive, not reactive, as we have been. Our children and families in Iowa deserve no less. As you will hear today, the legislature and governor have reduced support for Iowa's public universities' operating budgets by some $30 million from just the start of the last budget year. We have heard our university presidents present the stark reality that state funding is not adequately supplementing the lower tuition rates that our resident students receive. We have heard from them that they cannot raise salaries even to the cost of living. We have heard that our universities are losing great researchers to their competitors, and our first-generation families cannot afford to send their children to our public universities. Student government leaders have told us for some time now that late-minute and mid-year tuition increases are making it difficult for Iowa students and their families to prepare for the cost of higher education. In a recent newspaper editorial, Cody West, the president of the student government at Iowa State University, who is here and will be talking to us today, stated, and I quote in part, the following: "As a land grant, our mission is to be the most affordable and accessible to Iowa students. Students that will contribute significantly to our state's economy by becoming our local farmers, teachers, agronomists, engineers, veterinarians, and neighbors. We write today to ask all Iowans to think long and hard about what our priorities are as a state." I could not have said it better, and their comments represent similar comments we have received from student leadership at the other 2 universities. For the last 2 years, our board has adjusted fall tuition rates just months before the semester has begun. This is a poor way to do business, and it is unrealistic to expect 3 large universities to operate without annual revenue increases. It is time for the budgeting process to become proactive, not reactive. Each of our 3 universities are unique and should be treated as such. And I'll lead with this: we can do better. As a first-generation college student who attended all 3 of Iowa's public universities, I did so paying my way through each of the universities who provided a high-quality education. Our parents' generation, often referred to as the greatest generation for a reason, knew the importance of maintaining high-quality, affordable education for resident students in this great state. The task force members look forward to hearing what students and families, faculty, staff, and other university presidents have to say about dealing with the funding problems we have today. And with that, I will lead with Dr. Rachel Boone, a board member, Regent staffer, who will have a fact-based information presentation for all to see. Thank you, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Regent McKibben. And I do want to take just a few minutes to sort of set the stage with some of the national context. In prior meetings, board members and others have asked for a little bit more data on the national context of what's going on with tuition and public higher education funding. We did have a presentation in June from Dr. Rob Tukushian, who shared with us some of the economic principles behind how some of these decisions get made. So we're going to flesh that out a little bit with some more data today. I will quickly restate the goals here. The first is the goal that the tuition task force set out at the start of this, and the other two that really frame the work and frame how we want to look at the data we're going to see today are part of sort of the public compact of what higher education publicly here and what the Board of Regents strategic plan sort of states is what the goals are. So those are always important to remind ourselves how we're framing how we look at all of this. So Regent enrollment is growing, and we know that, and that's an important part of the context of these conversations. It is growing at the undergraduate level over the last several years, as well as at the graduate level. And if we look at just the undergraduates from the most recent fall term, so fall 2016, we see we are primarily serving Iowans too. We are 60% across the Regents as a system, 60% of the undergraduates are Iowa residents. There's a range in there set from between our institutions. It's from the high 50s, high to mid 50s, up to the high to mid 80s. So there's an institutional variation in that, but we are serving Iowans at our institutions. And most importantly, the student success outcomes that we're seeking, we're doing so quite effectively. This is a national look at public higher education systems in the 50 states, and Iowa's the top performer in terms of graduation outcomes of the undergraduates. This is full-time and part-time students who start college for the first time, and we are 20 percentage points. As a state, we're 20 percentage points above the national average in terms of our graduation outcomes. This is pretty exceptional and really sort of speaks for itself. I will give a quick reminder that we do use 6-year as the benchmark, the 6 years or less, in terms of how we measure and compare graduation rates nationally, because that's what's available for national comparison data. Of course, the institutions and the board office are tracking graduation at the 4-year level, at the 5-year level, and the majority of undergraduates do complete in 4.5 years. However, for national comparison data, we use 6 years or less, and that does allow us to also include part-time students. One more look at completion outcomes is really important too, because some students who leave us are still quite successful, and we want to sort of track that too. So again, with a 20 percentage point bump above the national average, Iowa is the top performer nationally. So students who come to us and maybe change their major to something we're not offering, or have a family reason or a health reason why they have to leave the institution without a degree, oftentimes are still going and having successful outcomes somewhere else. And this is important for us to sort of keep track of as well. And you'll notice, again, this is full-time and part-time students, but full-time students are nearly guaranteed after starting here, they're going to get a degree. Whether it's from one of our institutions, which is the most likely outcome, or another, they're highly, highly successful students. This is an exceptional outcome for the state of Iowa. One last look at student success outcomes is in this issue of time to degree, which I sort of alluded to a minute ago. And over the last couple of decades, we really have, as a system, worked hard to bring that number down in terms of the number of years it takes to complete an undergraduate degree, and have been pretty successful and consistent in that work. This, again, it's an effort on the part of the institutions, as well as students and families who are recognizing the value, the economic value of getting in, getting that degree, and then moving on to the next phase of their lives. So this is another part of the success that we've had. And that's all happening. These national exceptional outcomes are happening in this context of funding that is just shifting. So we're having these nation-leading outcomes in the last 15 years in an environment where the proportion of state support versus support funding that's coming from net tuition income has shifted pretty dramatically. So 15 years ago, nationally speaking, it was what you see on the left there, the blue bars on the bottom, it shows more than 68%, more than 2/3 of funding for public higher education was coming from state appropriations. Nationally now, it's down to right at 50%. And that the tuition income part is the top portion of that, sort of in the green color. And it shifted from 25% to nearly 45% just in the last 15 years. So this is a pretty dramatic shift over that period of time. For our institutions, if we look at our general education revenues by source, we see that trend is the same, only at a little bit of a faster pace. Now, this is a longer timeline here, so it goes back really to 1981, but even if we start in the middle there, 15 years ago to around 2001 or so, where we were reasonably close to the national averages then. We've had a much faster pace and to where we were in FY17, with 63% being from tuition revenue to 32% from appropriations. So this is a pretty dramatic shift in a short period of time. So on that tuition, we want to talk about how we compare. The institutions have done a really nice job of showing the regents where their tuition compares to their peers. But again, if we look at a system level, how does the state of Iowa compare to other states? We can do that here with this data. These are arrayed. The blue on the bottom again is resident tuition and fees. So they're arrayed from low to high, low being in Wyoming and the high being in New Hampshire. And Iowa, you see there's a sort of a thin green arrow pointing to where the bar for Iowa is. And we're in the bottom third. And again, that's bottom third in terms of resident tuition and fees. Our nearest peers down there are Arkansas, South Dakota, Georgia, Missouri. Those are the states that have the most similar resident tuition and fee rates to what we charge. Midwestern states, who are maybe aside from South Dakota that are a little closer to us, are mostly in the top 50% in terms of resident tuition and fees on this. The gold bar on the top is the non-resident sort of premium that is paid on top of what residents pay. And there you see Iowa pops up a little more. And if we think about who are the peers now in terms of charging roughly the same rate to non-residents, as well as a similar proportionality in a way between the resident and non-resident, now we're sort of similar to Georgia again. North Carolina is a sort of a peer in the non-resident and proportionality, and Tennessee. So again, southern states primarily that we're sort of comparing ourselves to in that regard as a system. And that's just a one-year look at tuition. If we talk about over the last 5 years, we can look at what's the percent increase in tuition across all these states over the last 5 years. And again, we're focused now on resident tuition and fees rates. Again, there's a green arrow pointing to where Iowa is. You see it's fairly small, the little blue bar representing the percent increase over the last 5 years in Iowa. We are most similar here, and the range is really wide. I should point out that 59, if you can't read it because the type is very small, is Louisiana, has had a pretty dramatic increase, and that's entirely related to a pretty dramatic shift in how the state appropriates funds to public higher education in Louisiana, essentially defunding public higher education in the state. Washington State has the greatest decrease, and it's a similar situation of changes in the state funding structure that led to those outcomes. But again, our peers here are important to talk about. Which states are like us in terms of having these relatively small increases over 5 years? And our peers here are Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, Montana is fairly similar, but those first three, in particular, Minnesota, very similar to us. They're states we look to a lot for a number of things, but they're also states that were in the top half on that last slide of their resident tuition and fees are already in the top 50% of what's being charged nationally. So when they do a very small percentage increase that's really similar to ours, it nets them a very different net tuition outcome in terms of the revenue available to support their institutions. So aid to students we've talked about and will continue to talk about is very important. And this is a look at, this is not a national comparison now, I'm showing you what our institutions have done over the last several years. And you see there are pretty dramatic increases. In part, I would be remiss if I didn't point out part of that increase is due to enrollment growth. We've had to keep up and support the new students as they're coming to us. However, the pace of increase here is 45. If we look at the same 5-year period that was shown on the last one where we had very tiny tuition increases, the pace of increase here over 5 years is 45% increase. So that is dramatically outpacing both enrollment growth and that tuition growth in that same time period. So the institutions have collectively made a very big commitment to providing need and merit-based aid to support students in attending the institutions. Unfortunately, the state need-based aid has not shown similar growth, and in fact, we've seen a slight decrease. We've received, last year, which is what's represented here, Regent students received about $3 million in what would be considered need-based aid from the state. That's 6% of what the state offered in need-based aid to Iowa resident undergraduates. The Regent institutions as a collective enroll 31% of the undergraduate Iowa resident students, so 31% receiving 6% of the need-based aid. And you see in the bottom corner there, the state rank, and again, this is from this data actually comes from a national data source, and it's from the Iowa Student Aid Commission report. Iowa has the lowest percent of aid, need-based aid, going to public college students of any state in the country. So this is, and frankly, the gap between Iowa and Vermont, which is number 2, is pretty large. We are number 1 on this in terms of low percent by a pretty long shot. And as you know, another way students pay for their educations, besides having aid, besides getting paying tuition out of pocket, is through loans. It's important to point out that nearly a third of our degree recipients, bachelor's degree recipients, leave with $0 in loans that they have to pay back. That's a pretty significant number of students who do not have debt when they leave. However, we care an awful lot about those that do leave with debt because we know what that means for them. So the institutions have worked hard over the last several years of bringing that down. There's some variation in there, and some of that is pretty small, but it's important to observe it, and we've been able to bring that down through some hard concerted efforts on the parts of the institutions. A lot of loan counseling. All of our institutions have a really good, robust office where they're doing loan counseling with students and working with them on what's an appropriate amount to be pulling out to pay for education and other expenses. We need to continue this work, and as tuition conversations proceed, of course, we have to pay attention to this issue. But we have a really good base for doing it. We've been working hard at this for the last several years. And the last thing I'll remind you of is our financial literacy effort. The Board of Regents has been really effective in pushing this issue and having the institutions engage in the work and the effort of talking about financial literacy and how we can ensure that students gain this. And we are now at the point where in the academic year that we're about to begin, all new students that are coming to our Regent institutions, undergrads, are going to be receiving financial literacy training. It's going to scale, it's in place, and this is a really positive thing because we do know that this is directly related to our student success goals. Students who are struggling financially have a harder time keeping up with their coursework because they're busy trying to figure out how to make their ends meet, and when they have a hard time in their coursework, their ability to stay enrolled in the institution at all is severely challenged. So having these building blocks in place of financial literacy training, student loan counseling, the institutional financial aid strategies, these are necessary for us to have a really robust conversation now about what's appropriate for tuition. If we didn't have these really good building blocks in place, our tuition conversations that we're having throughout this summer would be missing an important element. So the good news is we do have these building blocks in place, and we're sort of well situated to have this conversation now. So I'll wrap it up with just a sort of a restatement of our ongoing priorities. The Regents are committed and have been committed to high quality education, teaching, learning, research, and really supporting student success, student access to this high quality education, these nation-leading student success outcomes. The economic development objectives of our institutions I didn't even touch on, but those are priorities and have received a lot of attention from the institutions as well. So we have to continue to seek all the efficient ways of obtaining these high outcomes, as we've been doing fairly effectively. But the sufficient resources to get there is why we're all here today. And having this conversation can help us make sure we don't reach a tipping point where we don't have enough resources to maintain those national leader outcomes that we're so proud of. So unless you have questions, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Allen and let him share Iowa State's plan with you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Boone. That was a great presentation, and now we're looking forward to the institution and their staff there. All three great members representing Iowa State University. So, President Allen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning and welcome to Iowa State University. I'd also like to thank all the members out here, the faculty, the staff, the students, and members of the public and the members of the Board of Regents. We appreciate this important opportunity to explore a longer-term approach to setting tuition rates. We recognize that college is a significant investment. We also acknowledge that our students and families have many choices when it comes to a college education. Reasonable, transparent, and predictable tuition rates are undoubtedly a major factor in that choice. We have two objectives today. We illustrate the unique value that Iowa State University offers. That is, what makes Iowa State, with its distinct land-grant mission, such a good value for our students as well as the entire state of Iowa. We'll look at what is needed for our large, complex, comprehensive university to maintain that high value and how that translates into funding and investment needs. This will include our 5-year tuition proposal. We'll get to the bottom line very quickly. This is our bottom line. Our enrollment has surged 37% since 2009. At the same time, our state appropriation per resident student has dropped 30%. Over the past decade, we've been forced to stretch our faculty, staff, and facilities, and we've reached a breaking point. Our case for making significant adjustments to tuition is twofold. First, we have experienced a steep decline in state support over the past decade, which means the state is no longer adequately supplementing the lower tuition our resident students pay. And two, in order to maintain a quality educational experience for our students, we need to appropriately align tuition with the cost of providing high-quality education. We'll dig deeper into our specific proposal in a few minutes, but first let me back up. We've seen this tremendous enrollment growth. So the question is, why? The surging demand for an Iowa State degree is generated by the three characteristics that make our university unlike any other institution in the state. Iowa State is a land-grant institution. We're the only land-grant institution in Iowa and only one of 76 in the country. Iowa State is a student-centered university committed to providing an exceptional educational experience. We're preparing students not only for successful careers, but for productive lives as contributing members of their communities. And we're also a member of the Association of American Universities, an organization of 62 leading research universities. Of those schools, only 18, including Iowa State, are also land grants. Our AAU status is indicative of our reputation as a nationally recognized, research-intensive university with an emphasis on faculty excellence and quality graduate and professional programs. This designation increases the value of an Iowa State degree for our students, both undergraduate and graduate, by enabling us to attract higher quality faculty engaged in cutting research. There are very few institutions across the country that encompass all three of these characteristics and deliver at such a high level. What does it mean to be a land grant? It means Iowa State was established with a distinct three-part mission, and we must deliver all aspects of this mission in a very tangible way. This mission also aligns our university strategic plan. First, Iowa State must be open and accessible to everyone who is eligible, regardless of race, gender, or social economic status. We must provide an education that's comprehensive and broad-based to prepare students to be the entrepreneurs, innovators, business professionals, and thought leaders in the workforce, as well as in their communities. This is achieved through our core competencies that differentiate us from the other colleges and universities in Iowa. We offer top programs in agriculture, engineering, biosciences, cybersecurity, architecture, veterinary medicine, and other STEM-related fields. We also recognize the importance of balancing these disciplines with the humanities and social sciences to develop students with both practical skills and critical thinking skills. Second, we must be innovative. That means that Iowa State is engaged in basic and applied research that addresses grand challenges and improves lives here in Iowa and throughout the world. Students reap the benefits of faculty research as it informs and advances classroom teaching and learning. And students can engage in research, even at the undergraduate level, to enhance their understanding of a particular field and to jumpstart their careers. Finally, and third, we must extend our knowledge and expertise far beyond campus to benefit our state, nation, and world. The concept of cooperative extension started here at Iowa State. Today, we are a 99-county campus with an IXU extension office located in every single county. 1 million Iowans are served by Iowa State University. That's 1 out of 3 Iowans through its extension and outreach programs. The ISU Research Park, in cooperation with ISU Economic Development Industry Relations, provides comprehensive economic development assistance in both existing companies and entrepreneurs. Currently, the park is home to 62 companies and more than 1,700 employees. It serves as a vital link between our students, our future workforce, our expertise, and innovation. We also established a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem now led by the ISU Startup Factory to support faculty, students, and others who want to bring new innovations to the marketplace to create new companies and new jobs. I thought I'd pull out one example that pulls together all 3 parts of the land-grant mission. Iowa and the nation are facing a massive shortage of cybersecurity workers. An estimated 300,000 cybersecurity jobs went unfilled last year alone. To help meet this critical need, Iowa State recently announced a new partnership with DMAC to create the Iowa Cyber Hub. Provost Wickert and I went down there a couple weeks ago to have that announcement. Iowa State offers one of the largest nationally renowned information assurance and cyber defense programs in the country. We're also a National Center for Academic Excellence in these areas. The Cyber Hub, the Iowa Cyber Hub, will provide a pathway for students who are interested in cybersecurity careers. It will also foster industry partnerships to support existing companies and provide cybersecurity training for the current workforce. This initiative brings together all parts of our land-grant mission: education, innovation, extension, and in this case, partnerships with the private sector and the community colleges. The Iowa Cyber Hub is an example of the types of programs that are driving student demand. We've seen tremendous growth in agriculture, engineering, and other STEM-related fields, as well as our business program. You can see the enrollment growth of those various disciplines. But Iowa State is proud to be the school of choice for Iowa students. More students in 71 of Iowa's 99 counties choose Iowa State over any other school in Iowa. Not only are we the school of choice of Iowa, we're attracting top students from all over the country and around the globe. Our rapid growth is not the result of new recruitment strategy or lower admission standards. We are attracting bright, accomplished, well-prepared students. In fact, the average ACT score for new freshmen has increased to 25.17. The reality is, our growth is essentially market-driven. We offer high-quality programs that prepare students for in-demand careers. Nearly 20,500 ISU students are enrolled in agriculture, engineering, and other STEM-related fields. Nearly 1 in 4 students identify as U.S. multicultural or international. Our students come from every county in Iowa, all 50 states, and more than 120 countries. It's important to highlight that 28% of our undergraduates are first generation. Once our students get here, they're staying in school and graduating. We achieved a 30-year highs in retention and graduation rates. And the majority of our graduates are choosing to stay in Iowa. 52% of graduates who sought employment stayed in Iowa to begin their careers. These measures of student success are great, but we recognize that what students and families really want to know is, what is the return on my investment? What is the return on my investment? What are the job prospects with an Iowa State degree, and how valuable is that degree? Iowa State graduates are some of the most highly sought after employees. Nearly 95% of Iowa State graduates have landed jobs in their field or continued their education within 6 months of getting their degree. We are the state's leading source of engineers, architects, veterinary medicine, agricultural, and STEM-related professionals. Listed on the slide are some examples of average starting salaries as reported by our graduates. Overall, Iowa State ranks first among all Iowa colleges and universities in the projected 20-year earnings difference between an Iowa State graduate and someone who has a high school degree. According to payscale.com, our graduates will earn an average of $418,000 more over 20 years than someone with only a high school degree. In the years to come, Iowa's job market is expected to grow, and the state is anticipating a major post-secondary workforce shortage. This means college graduates will be in even higher demand. According to a recent study by Georgetown University Center on Education, 68% of all jobs in Iowa will require education beyond high school by 2025. Currently, only 58% of Iowans between ages 25 and 64 have post-secondary degrees. This means that nearly 128,000 Iowans will need to earn a degree or another credential by 2025. Among those job openings are almost 24,000 STEM-related jobs. This is a serious concern of the Governor's STEM Advisory Council. I had the pleasure of serving as co-chair of this council in 2012 and 2013 with then Lieutenant Governor Reynolds. The goal was then and remains today to increase STEM interest and achievement to regain Iowa's legacy as a leader in education and workforce development. Iowa State University is well positioned to help the state meet its workforce needs, but we can't do it without sufficient resources to support our high-quality programs, our land-grant mission, and overall educational experience. So that brings us back to the slide I showed you early in the presentation. This is our key point. As enrollment has escalated, our state appropriations per resident student has plunged. Last year, we received $3,700 less per resident student from the state than we did in 2009. Adequate funding is essential to support all three interworking components of our land-grant mission of education, innovation, and extension. We can't sacrifice one leg of the mission for the others. Unfortunately, our FY18 budget situation is even more grim after the state substantially reduced our base appropriation by more than 6%. Up to this point, we've done a pretty good job coping with our financial challenges. We had a long-standing commitment to efficiency, and we've been big supporters of the Board of Regents tier initiative, chaired by the chairman. We've even been nationally recognized for our efforts. In 2012, the Wall Street Journal lauded Iowa State as the 7th most efficient university in the nation. And we continue to operate more efficiently year after year. Just a few weeks ago, the American Council of Trustees and alumni released a report on higher education cost. It looked at the amount of schools spend on administrative staff compared to instructional staff. And to give you a sense, the median spending on administrative staff for schools similar to Iowa State was 17 cents for every dollar spent on instructional staff. In FY16, Iowa State spending on administrative staff was 12 cents for every dollar. And last year, it was down to 10 cents. We've also been diligent about routinely reorganizing academic and administrative units to improve efficiency and effectiveness. A list of these are on the slide. I might pick out a few of these. Recent reorganizations include merging the Department of Anthropology with the Department of World Languages and Cultures, which has created administrative efficiencies. Classroom utilization is more efficient than ever and was cited as an exemplar in tier consultant Ad Astra's report. Our course availability group monitors classroom and course demand in real time to ensure classrooms are fully utilized and that all undergraduates can access the courses they need to graduate. We already completed implementation of shared services in College of Design with very impressive savings. And we're actively implementing the tier-recommended shared procurement initiatives. Efficiency will remain a key focus, and we will continue to identify and implement new savings strategies. But operational and administrative efficiencies can only go so far. As a result of record growth and declining state support, we are tipping the balance between efficiency and educational quality. And here's a short list of what is at risk. We have worked extremely hard to elevate our programs. These are just a few examples of the nationally and internationally recognized programs that set us apart and attract students to Iowa State. Of course, we're very proud of the #1 ranking by the Agricultural and Biosystems Engineering. 18th in the nation in supply chain management, which was my old field back here when I was here before. We offer one of the longest running biological and pre-medical illustration programs in the country, which is nationally renowned for combining science and art. Our agriculture and forestry programs are always ranked in the top 10 in the world. We also operate the only fully accredited veterinary diagnostic lab in Iowa. And that lab is one of the most productive in the country, conducting 1.5 million tests each year to protect animal and human health. The VDL plays a critical role in supporting Iowa's $14 billion animal agricultural industry. And I highlight this because of that VDL, we are able to attract high-quality faculty in vet med. But it's a symbiotic relationship. Because we have high-quality faculty in vet med, we have this very highly efficient and very nationally known VDL. We're proud of the progress we made, and new investments will allow us to not only to maintain the excellence of these programs, but maybe elevate additional programs to those rankings. These achievements are a testament to the work of our faculty and staff, who continually go above and beyond to ensure our students receive an exceptional educational experience. But over the past decade, we have stretched our employees and our resources to a breaking point. We've reached a point where we don't make new investments. If we don't make new investments, we will lose this momentum and we could wipe out the progress. We are now seeing the leading indicators that our high quality may be at risk. As Provost Wickert puts it, this is the canary in the coal mine. Over the past decade, we've asked more and more of our faculty and staff to help address our record growth. In just the 4 months I've been back on campus, I've seen how hard our faculty and staff are working. They are taking on extra projects and assignments. They are forced to compensate for positions that remain unfulfilled because of budget restrictions. It's incredibly difficult to see the devotion of our employees and then not be able to demonstrate our appreciation for their hard work and contributions with salary increases. Because of the tight budget this year, I was forced to make a very difficult decision not to have mandated salary increases. Our faculty and staff are understandably frustrated. There are many who could have left but haven't. They're very loyal. I think we're reaching a breaking point. We must do something about this or we're going to lose our best people. Recruiting and retaining faculty and staff is becoming more and more difficult as we compete nationwide, not just in Iowa, with better paying institutions in the private sector. We're already seeing the effects. The College of Business lost 2 strong young faculty to Big Ten universities because of salary issues. Engineering has lost 26 mid-career faculty due to resignations over the past 3 years. These examples, both in business and engineering, illustrate why we have not been able to make progress improving our student-to-faculty ratio, which ultimately hurts our students. On the staff side, our Student Counseling Center, for example, has lost 3 counselors to the Social Security Administration in the last 2 years because of a gap of $30,000 to $40,000 in pay. Our STEM facilities and large lecture halls are operating at or beyond capacity. 2 large lecture auditoriums in Kildee Hall and Food Sciences Building are in desperate need of renovation. The renovation of Kildee Hall by itself is about $2 or $3 million. Our Ag Education and Studies classroom laboratory has a maximum capacity of 30, but somehow we have 70 people in that lab. Because of surging enrollment in engineering, 10 different teaching labs now run 12 hours per day. Any longer would put risk, would increase the risk of serving the students. The College of Business is also growing so rapidly that classes are held until 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Overall, inadequate resources have precluded us from expanding capacity to address our growth, both from an employee and an infrastructure point of view. We realize it took us 10 years to reach this imbalance, and it will likely take us more than 5 years to correct it. But we must start now to fix the issues. And because of the tuition task force and this process, it forced us to look at what we have and what we need and develop a set of priorities to address the issue. I'll go through each of these 4 priorities. First, faculty and staff retention. To maintain Iowa State's excellence, we must have excellent faculty and staff. We want our students to learn from the best and be supported by the best. In order to do this, we must provide competitive salaries and reasonable annual increases to ensure that we can retain our top employees. Second, faculty and staff recruitment. Our students expect and deserve to receive the individualized attention and instruction that need to be successful. To offset our rapid enrollment growth, we must hire enough faculty to achieve a net increase of 330 tenured or tenure-track faculty. 2/3 of these faculty are needed in the STEM disciplines, and that's an important fact to consider. Without a major change in enrollment, this will enable us to lower our student-to-faculty ratio to 16:1. This is a quality indicator that many students and their parents look at when they're choosing a college, and quite honestly, it puts us in line with the other Regents universities. Additional staff are also needed to support the needs and issues associated with that larger student body and a larger faculty if we are able to recruit them. Third, building maintenance and expanded capacity. If we are successful in hiring 330 new faculty, we need space for those new faculty. We also need to address deferred maintenance issues such as those impacting our highly utilized STEM buildings. Fourth and final, with any tuition increase, we are committed to making additional proportional investments in need-based financial aid. At the heart of a land-grant university, we're here established to educate everyone, make it affordable for students in Iowa. So as we developed a plan to achieve our strategic priorities, the priorities here are to protect our quality, to maintain our quality. We also made 4 budget assumptions for the next 5 years. Our general operating state appropriations will remain flat. Our enrollment will remain flat. The HEPI index rate will be 2.14. The HEPI is the inflation rate used in higher education, and 2.14% is the average HEPI for the last 5 years. And 4, and although we're using HEPI to account for inflation instead of a more conservative CPI, we are planning to take an even more aggressive approach to efficiency. We're committing to a 2.25% in annual cost reallocations. We acknowledge that achieving our priorities will be a major undertaking. Again, it took us a decade to reach this imbalance, and it would be unreasonable and imprudent to think that we could fix this one in just 1 year. Indeed, we know we won't be able to achieve all of these in 5 years. But at the request of the Regents, we have established a 5-year tuition proposal that will set us on course and move us in the right direction. Based on our 4 priorities and our 4 budget assumptions, we have arrived at the following proposal. 7% increase to the base tuition for resident undergraduates for the time period indicated. 4% increase to base tuition for non-resident undergraduates. I should note that the graduate tuition will go up in step with these increases. Differential adjustments to engineering, business, and additional STEM programs. These adjustments would be phased in and will allow us to better align tuition with the high cost of providing those science, technology, and experiential learning focused programs. Essentially, we would move our business and engineering differentials in alignment with the University of Iowa. We also expanded the number of areas covered. I think we had added 5 programs for this year, and we've added a few more in our list. This table shows the 5-year tuition model for resident and non-resident based tuition. It's important to note that currently Iowa State is among the most affordable when compared to other AAU institutions. Our resident tuition is second to last among AAU public schools, and our non-resident tuition is second to last among all AAU institutions. Even with the prescribed increases, we will still remain one of the most affordable AAU institutions by far. As I mentioned, the tuition proposal was developed on the assumption that our general operating state appropriation would be flat for the next 5 years. Following the mid-year reductions in FY17 and the additional recurring cost of FY18, and the indicators that the state budget situation is not getting any better, we feel it would be unrealistic and imprudent to plan for any general operating increases from the state. That said, that doesn't mean we no longer expect the state to make higher education a priority and to support its public institutions. We will continue to advocate strongly for increased state support for Iowa State, for the University of Northern Iowa, and for the University of Iowa. Our students deserve it, and frankly, our state needs it. The state can't expect 128,000 Iowans to earn post-secondary degrees over the next 8 years to meet the state workforce needs, while at the same time shifting much of the burden of the cost of public higher education to students and their families. If we do see significant changes in state support over the coming years, or significant changes to any of our budget assumptions, we will revisit this proposal. However, we must stop the troubling pattern of last-minute tuition changes based on state funding decisions. The take-home message is this: Iowa State does an excellent job of fulfilling a unique purpose for the state. We are preparing a diverse student body for successful careers and productive lives. We're supporting the world-renowned faculty and top graduate students who not only provide cutting-edge academic experience, but also develop innovations that address grand challenges and improve lives. And we're serving Iowans and supporting job creation throughout the state of Iowa. To fulfill our mission at the level of quality our students and all Iowans expect and deserve, we need the resources to make new investments. This 5-year plan will allow us to make significant progress on our strategic priorities, and we believe is a proactive, reasonable approach for our students and their families. Thank you, and I will answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellent presentation. I have colleagues that I know have questions and stuff, but you hit one that I had to write down here. You said increasing state funding flat, quote unquote flat, when you were defining this 5-year plan. Is flat 0 that we have this year, or what is flat?
Flat
Your
is
definition.
Flat is 0.
Flat.
Zero increase.
So you're using 0 as the versus going back a year or 2 or 3.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. That's not a real good thing for me to hear. So
Well,
I was afraid you were going to say that.
well, we tried to develop this
Yeah.
plan based on realistic assumptions.
Right. Very good. I have colleagues that I'll just leave you all just to move around. Thank you, colleagues, and go ahead and ask your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Allen, for your great presentation. Over my years in public service, one of the questions that I often received was regarding predictable tuition. And I know that this is a difficult thing to do. I wondered if you considered that, like a freshman coming in, guaranteed tuition rates. And in the environment of static state budgeting, I know it's difficult, but I wondered if you talked about this in the planning, because it is a subject that comes up a lot in the public.
Thank you for the question. We did think about that option on quite a few occasions, because we know that I believe Drake University is using that process now. John told me that University of Kansas and Arizona are using that same 4-year commitment. I think we've decided you have to be very careful if you go in that direction. And the reason you have to be careful is the following reasons. First of all, the world's too uncertain, so you are basically hedging what that rate has to be. And when you hedge that rate, you probably bump up that starting tuition pretty high to accommodate possible changes. It probably works a little bit better in the private college because they don't have the public sector creating variability that we now have in the public sector. So you have a very tough administrative issue if, in fact, someone goes longer than 4 years, if you have part-time students. I think President Nook alluded to that. But I think we decided that because of administrative issues, and I think in the case of Kansas, they found that the students were not helped by that approach. But it is one we seriously considered and put it to the side because of those reasons.
Thank you for your presentation. Very good. You talked about investment, and I just want to make a point on that. I think our students are the whole state's investment, everybody in this room, everybody outside this room. And because of that, with an investment, you try to continually improve. What does this plan maintain your quality? Is your plan, does it have steps to continue to improve? What kind of ideas on that do you have?
I will answer part of that, and I may turn over to my provost here
Okay.
to answer other pieces to that. When we built the model indicating what do we need to in terms of base of our tuition proposal, we did a couple things, but what we did was say to get our faculty-student ratio down to 16:1, what would it take? So in a sense, that's improving our quality because it's not 16:1 at the present time. We also put into this the fact I mentioned 2/3 of that growth in faculty would be in STEM-related fields. So we factored into our numbers that they are more costly to attract and to house. They have labs, they have, so all those additional capacities in the lab side will improve our quality of education. So we at a minimum protecting it, but I think it also can improve the quality, as I mentioned, elevate some of our other programs to the rankings that I alluded to. So, John,
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Allen, could you elaborate on the assumption of 5-year flat enrollment?
Well, in a sense, based upon our estimate of what we need to protect our quality, getting back to your question, and to make a reasonable progress on that, this was kind of a compromise. We'd actually have to have a higher number over a longer period of time. We were very much driven by the fact that this predictability is so important to the students and their families. And we also, I think, said we need to take control a little bit of our own destiny. We based this on the assumption that we didn't want to compare ourselves to anyone else. This is Iowa State University. This is what we think we need to continue serving the state of Iowa and the students here in a quality manner. But that predictability was kind of the driving force of that 7% throughout the 5 years. That said, as I mentioned, if there's additional state support, we know what, if you had $1 million additional support, what that would do to the tuition percentage increase. So we could be flexible, but we don't want to be jumping at those changes unless they are significant.
Okay, thank you.
Can you talk a little bit more about your plans for financial aid?
Well, the financial aid is, and I probably should get Martino up here, Dr. Harmon. He can talk about it, but we have a very, very well laid out financial aid package, but philosophically on the need-based is we always want to be sure we have a proportional increase in need-based scholarships. But Senior Vice President for Student Affairs.
Good morning. We are very concerned about that, and one of the things that we will do, depending on the outcome of his plan, is do some enrollment modeling, and it may take some help. What enrollment modeling helps us do is determine, based on the tuition rates, how much aid do we need, what changes do we need to make in financial aid to maintain enrollment. It's a very complicated project, but it allows us to really, give a good estimate of what's needed, also what adjustments we may need in our recruitment strategies. But that financial aid modeling will be extremely important as well. We also know that we have a significant number of our students who do have need. As a matter of fact, 36% of our students are Pell eligible based on EFC, or I'm sorry, 20 to 24% of our students over the last 6 years rather are Pell eligible. And so we do have a significant number of students with needs, so we're very sensitive to that. And we will ensure that we've done enough studies that we can achieve the appropriate aid.
Okay.
Could I just add a couple other points to
Sure.
Dr. Harmon's comments? As you know, we have a very productive foundation at this university, and much of that effort goes to raising scholarship money, and that helps tremendously in lightening the burden of these increases. And we also have scholarship programs in each of the colleges that are quite impressive and very helpful in this situation.
Okay, thank you.
I've got one back on the same thing when we were talking about the budget 5-year assumption. Why HEPI and not CPI?
Okay, now you're testing my knowledge of economics. I'm an economist.
That's what I have you here for.
And there's probably better economists in the room here. But, as an economist, I always believe you should use the index that is relevant to the industry. And in this case, the HEPI index is the one that's used for higher ed. We want to have good decisions. I think we have to have good data. And we can kind of play the game of using CPI, but it could give us false impressions of what we need to do.
One other one, this may not happen, but what happens if your projections, if the appropriations increase? And of course, it won't take much increase to go off from 0, but what will be the adjustments and how will, and maybe some of your other staff will have that, how you'll approach that?
Well, these are my thoughts, and they may disagree, but we clearly would be responsible to that type of action in some way. For instance, if the state increased our appropriations by $3 million, ceteris paribus, we like to use that in economics, I think, Miles, that would allow us to decrease our tuition by almost 2%. The issue is when do you do that, the timing issue, but we would clearly respond in a way that says, okay, if the state does this, we would lower that increase.
You said 2%, right?
I think about 2%.
Was it 2%, Miles?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's using the calculations going up from 0 here. 1% would be something. 1.5% would be something as we.
That is correct, and that is to the base undergraduate resident tuition.
Right.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
President Allen, I want a point of clarification. I would like a point of clarification on the 0 comment. I think we may be talking past each other a little bit. So you're talking about 2017 being a base year. You're not talking about appropriations going to nothing. You're talking
No. This is not zero-based budgeting.
Yeah, yeah. So yes. I just would like to get that. Could you talk about that base, just for everybody here to clear up that point, please?
Well, I may turn this over to Miles because he will have the numbers, I'm sure. But I'm assuming that there'll be no change, increase, or decrease in the level of state appropriations, and that we can discuss and debate that assumption. But that's what we're trying to say, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make an assumption that everybody understands baseline, and thanks for clarifying that, because that's exactly what I meant. Regent Johnson.
I just have a quick question here. Sorry, is that better? Perfect. All right, with your enrollment, you said also to maintain flat or stay at that number that it's currently at. Is that the ideal number for Iowa State? I know you guys grew at such a rapid rate, but is this flat number comfortable in where everybody's going to continue to succeed and have all their needs met? Is that 36,000 number?
It's comfortable if we get these tuition dollars. In terms of when you look at optimal sizes, you have to look at issues such as housing. You have to look at issues such as the kind of support you have on campus. I think it's stretched right now, as I mentioned, but I think 36,000 is a reasonable. Whether or not these tuition increases, if they are passed, if they become a reality, will have an impact on the level of demand for Iowa State. Of course, we have to factor that in someplace. But to me, in the last 4 months, I think we can accommodate the 36,000 students if we get this type of help.
Okay. And then there's also an enrollment plan in place to keep those numbers where they should be, correct?
I'll turn this over to my enrollment plan person.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, though, a change in tuition gives us an opportunity to go back and look at those plans, and that's part of that enrollment modeling, not just for financial aid, but also recruitment strategies, and how does this change impact or provide us with opportunities to make changes to our enrollment plan. I firmly believe that we want to maintain a healthy enrollment at Iowa State. I think the goal is to utilize these resources to scale up the services, the quality for students, so students can have, an enhanced experience. That's really the goal, is not to decrease our enrollment, but to scale up so that we can provide the experience that students deserve at Iowa State.
Great, thank you.
Colleagues, are there any other questions? You need to correct me on anything else, Dr. Richards? I made a legislative assumption that I didn't. Thanks for clarifying that. Well, what a great presentation. We appreciate it. We appreciate the work you're doing in the interim, Mr. President. The job you're doing and the things that I've heard about keeping Iowa State moving along till we get a new president has been fantastic. So
thank you, sir.
We really appreciate the work you've done and your staff in putting this together. So with that, at 11:31, we're on time for our 30-minute break. We will, if everybody will be back here at noon, we will start a listening session at noon, and we will open with a student government leadership presentation so that you gentlemen out there know you're the first to go. So you can prepare in the next half an hour. But we'll start with the students and we'll go forward there. Thank you. So we're going to start off here, and we have the podium over there with the microphone over there for everybody that wants to present and give us some information today. And as I said in the listening session, we were going to start with Cody, who wrote the article in the Register that I thought he and his vice president wrote. So with that, we will reconvene, and you have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Yes, good. Awesome. Sounds good. Okay, so I won't share very much today. I really would appreciate it if all of you in this room would take a look at that article. It really came from Cody and I's hearts and really spoke true to what we really want for Iowa State. First of all, I'd like to thank our administration at Iowa State for the collaborative process in developing this 5-year plan with the tuition task force. It's been really great seeing the faculty, staff, and students come together to help evaluate this proposal and watch it go along. Dr. Allen mentioned during his presentation that breaking point that we're at Iowa State, and that time really is now. It's right now at Iowa State in the classroom since the time I've been there. You've heard of faculty resignations, hurting the quality of our education and the decaying space in which we're allowed that education. And that's all true. I experience it every day as a student walking across campus, going to class 13 times a week if I have 13 credits. Really hurting the quality of our education at Iowa State, and that's something we don't want. And today I'd like to make it very clear that we're not talking about that extracurricular experience. We're not talking about student government and these lovely student activities that students get to be involved in, homecoming, those celebrations on campus that really keep students at Iowa State and provide that sense of community, home, and belonging. Today we're talking about why students come to Iowa State in the first place, and the primary reason that's to get a degree. An education that after their time at Iowa State will open countless doors, countless opportunities, and provide them with ways to support their family and hopefully their students and kids one day when they try to go to college. And what has been shared with you today is really a plan to protect and improve the quality of an Iowa State education. But it really can't stop there. I love that we're providing predictability for Iowans and their families, and especially students that are coming from out of state and contribute to that richness of diversity that we cherish at Iowa State. But it really can't stop there, because there's one thing that is variable and elastic in the situation: that's state support. And without state support being flat or constant or increasing, we're faced with what we've been faced with the past 2 years and past 2 summers, and those are last-minute increases that really hurt our students and are unjust to Iowans, their families, and students coming from all over the globe. It's these last-minute increases that really hurt Iowa State, not only as an image to the state of Iowa, but also really hurt us in allowing students to continue their education without being forced to work, put in extra hours, and take away from that classroom experience. It is really on all of us, and this is really the last thing I want to leave us all with today. It's on all of us. It can't just be student government members. It can't just be our government relations team or our administration at Iowa State, but we all as a collective. And I thank the Board of Regents for doing this, and I really appreciate it. And I hope that this all continues, and this education of our state and all the citizens of our state continues, because it really is important. And we need to establish higher education as a priority in Iowa once again, because I feel during my time as a student that it has lacked, and everything that has been done with this tuition task force has really given me hope. It's given me a little bit more love for Iowa State and a little bit more love for our region institutions. So I hope that we can all come together and really reestablish higher education as a top priority in our state. Thank you all so much.
You can't leave. There might be questions. I have other colleagues here that may have hard questions for you, even though this is not a test time.
Absolutely.
Any of my colleagues have questions? Well, thank you so much. Great presentation. Now the Vice President is coming. This is Cody, too.
Yes, I'm Cody Smith, often referred to as the other Cody, which is fine. Okay, so I'm just going to share a little bit today about looking at this from a student's perspective, and I'll keep it short and sweet. So students know that state support in the legislature has faltered over the past couple of years, and we've seen that evident in our tuition increases, and we've seen it in the quality of our education. I do want to express our concern that with the tuition task force meeting with legislative leaders, due to lack of attendance by legislators, it was canceled. I think that shows us as students that this is a huge concern for us. I know that also legislators often hold the view that tuition is a way to keep these state-run institutions afloat as another revenue source, but I think that we view it as a way that ignores the land-grant mission of Iowa State. You heard Dr. Allen talk a little while ago about what a land-grant mission is, and the very first thing he mentioned was being open, accessible, and affordable to students. And that's something that the state has not shown us over the past couple of years. Students that attend our university, as Regent McKibben referenced in the letter that we wrote in the Register, they become our local neighbors, they become our lawyers, our farmers, our agronomists, and Dr. Allen also talked about how ISU Extension serves over 1 million Iowans. Everybody that attends this university will give back in some way, shape, or form to the state of Iowa. And we're hoping that the state will continue to support us in a greater way than they have in the past. So I guess I want to talk a little bit about my story. I'm from Indiana, so I grew up on a farm there and grew up about a half an hour south of Purdue University, another respectable land-grant university. All I ever wanted to do was study agriculture and political science. And finding a way to combine those two, my sights were set on Iowa. And I'd never been here, and it was those first moments on campus where I felt that I was at home. And as a person who's financing my own education, I hope that I can continue to find the predictability that I expected when I came here. I came here with the assumption that I would go through the world-class programs, receive the education that would make me successful in life, but I also came here with the assumption that I could afford it and I could pay myself. And that's what I want the opportunity to do. So I hope that the people in this room and the people in the legislature can find an agreement that allows predictable and transparent increases in tuition, because we know that that's going to happen. The plan laid forth today is great, simply because it's a plan and we haven't had that in the past. And I think that as students, we can support that because we know what's going to come at us. So that's all I'm going to say today, but I just wanted to express my gratitude to the administration, as Cody said before, with being so collaborative with the plan, express my gratitude to the regents here, and also urge the state, all legislators, regardless of party, to continue to support Iowa State University because we support Iowans every day. Thank you.
Thanks, Cody. For those of you that might not know, when we have Regents meetings regularly at the universities, we have a breakfast meeting with student leaders of all the universities. And I can tell you, in my 4 years here, all the student leaders were the kind of people that you would want controlling this country in the future. And just like we heard from Cody, these are well thought out and great people. So thank you for the time you spend leading the student university here. Next.
Good afternoon. I'm Vivek, and I am the president of Graduate and Professional Student Senate at Iowa State University. Today I'll be sharing my thoughts both as a leader and as an international graduate student at Iowa State. First, I want to make the statement that Iowa State University and education in general demands greater funding from the state. It's all good and well to invite and attract businesses to come to Iowa and employ the people of Iowa. But what's the point without educating the people of Iowa? If the people of Iowa is not educated and people are not educated in general, these companies would hold no values. And even if the students do not stay back to the Iowa after they graduate, and they go back to their home states and their home country, or even to other states and other countries, it still benefits Iowa. Wherever they go, they bring Iowa with them. You have exposed Iowa to us. It's not leaving us, even if we go wherever in the world. And when it stays with us, it's a word of mouth that we give it to other people, that how great being in Iowa State University it is. I do not know if I can say that Iowa is the place or a good example of multiculturalism, but I definitely want to say that it's a unique place to visit and to stay and to perhaps settle down as much as any place in the country or in the world. Now, given the lack of the state funding, what increases that was proposed by Dr. Allen a little earlier is definitely unfortunate and inevitable. So having said that, I want to share a little bit of my experience as an international student. When I joined Iowa State, or when I was planning to join Iowa State University, I did not look Iowa State University, what ranking it has and what accreditation it has. I just talked to other students, fellow students in my department. Most of the students unanimously said one thing: how welcoming and how supporting Iowa State University it is. And that's my decision making. I did not want to go and see, even though AAU accreditation and other rankings are very important for the university, but I did not see that. I saw what Iowa offers to me as an international student or as a student. Indeed, in past 5 years, I saw myself what those students were telling me before I joined Iowa State University. With more than 900 student clubs and organizations, the student activities in Iowa State is perhaps the most favorite thing of mine. I'm sure that I could have perhaps got similar quality of research and education if I have gone to other university, but the unique experience of the Iowa State University is what it makes this university better than any place other than Iowa State. But with such a unanticipated drop in the state support, Iowa indeed stands at the risk of losing its quality in both education and student activities and student experience. As a graduate student leader, I interact with many graduate students, and I have talked to many graduate students who have stayed here for a couple of years, and they know that how burdensome it is to train 100 students as a TA. Now, because of the increase in enrollment, they have to do the teaching for more than 200 students, which is very burdensome for graduate students. Graduate students are also future faculties. And the only way to produce the quality future faculties are to have one. If we do not have quality faculties, we cannot produce the quality faculties in the future. So it is that balance of keeping the quality faculties, keeping the quality and inviting quality graduate students, training them, and producing the quality product, but that requires funding. And if we don't get funding from state, it is very unfortunate that we have to put it on the students. And I want to make a last statement on that thing is that overall, I would say that no students like tuition increase. None of the students that I would go in 2 weeks and say that, okay, there's a tuition increase and they're going to be happy about it. But we certainly need to, and for that, we certainly need to keep fighting to the state to increase the state support to all our Iowa University. But meanwhile, we get that it is on us as a student leader and more to the university administration to communicate what is proposed. I think communication would hold a big key from our part and in fact from Regent's part, that why this tuition is increased and why students should be cooperating with it and seeing it in the other ways and not just being mad about it, I guess. Yeah. Thank you.
Are there questions? Thank you for a very, very fine presentation.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bridget Godis, and I work for the Iowa Senate Democrats. And today I'm here on behalf of Senator Herman Kornbach, who represents the city of Ames. He is also the ranking member of the Education Committee in the Iowa Senate. In front of you are his prepared comments, and I would just like to share them with the rest of the room at this time on his behalf. He apologizes for not being here. He had a vacation that he had planned months ago. I think he's driving back from North Dakota at the moment. So let me begin. Iowa State University students make up more than half my constituents. ISU employs 4 more people, including myself, than any other employer in my district. Furthermore, my grandfather, my mother, both of my brothers, both of my sister-in-laws, and a host of friends and other relatives have gotten their degrees from public universities. Topping the list, my better half earned her PhD at a public land-grant university, where she studied under a future Nobel laureate. My point is that the subject of public universities and I am far from neutral as anyone could possibly be. The lives of too many people I know and care about have markedly benefited from access to high-quality, affordable public university education. For the sake of Iowa's future, we have to keep our state universities affordable to all without compromising the quality of their education. This will take money. It takes money to staff and supply libraries and labs. It takes money to maintain and retain quality faculty and facilities. Students should certainly be asked to make a reasonable investment in the education that will consistently boost their lifetime earnings. But if we relied on tuition alone, a college degree would be affordable only to the few and not to the many. The state must support broad access to the institutions that contribute so much to the productivity of our workforce and the prosperity of our economy. Thus, the question becomes, what is the proper balance between tuition income and state support, and how much is it reasonable to ask students of modest means to contribute? The history of the recent decades shows that the balance has tipped dangerously towards tuition, and the resulting burden placed on students and their families has grown heavy. This practice must stop. The state must stop using our public universities as a cash cow in economic downturns. At such times, the belt tightening must be more equally shared. The university should do their part, to be sure, but to dump the burden of raising revenue solely on the backs of college students and their families is unfair. Moreover, disproportionate pounding of university budgets at such times cripples the university's ability to sustain long-term efforts at maintaining quality and advancing innovation. Figures on actual dollar appropriations tell the same stories. In 2001, the general fund education appropriation for the Regents was $549 million. Over the succeeding 3 fiscal years, over $75 million was cut. An agreement was undertaken after the recovery from the 2001 recession for the state to replace the cuts in return for the universities holding Regent tuition increases to a measure of inflation. That agreement was largely successful. By 2009, the Regent's general fund education appropriation had been restored to $577 million. Then the Great Recession hit. Nearly $129 million was cut. Less than $50 million of that cut was ever restored. Now with the current revenue shortfall, the general fund Regent's education appropriation line has been cut again, this time by $24 million. As a direct result, in-state tuition will rise by 5% for the school year that starts this month. An agreement similar to that undertaken in the recovery of 2001 should now be undertaken to restore the appropriations cut since 2009. Longer term, the state must restore its commitment to affordable quality education. That commitment has been shattered in recent decades. In 1993, Regent's general fund education appropriation consisted of 11.3% of the state budget. For the present fiscal year, it's only 6.6%. Over those 25 years, the inflation-adjusted appropriation to the Regent universities has been cut by $195.8 million, or 28.8%. How have these budget cuts affected a typical student's ability to afford college? What is it reasonable to ask a student from an average family to pay? A little historical comparison is in order. The total cost of tuition, fees, room, and board for an on-campus in-state student at ISU for the 1968-69 school year was $1,110. For this coming year, it'll be $17,153. Of course, one must adjust for inflation. There are various ways to do that. Using the CPI from 1,110 from June of 68 would become $7,836 in this year. Some would argue, however, that the HIPPI, or the Higher Education Price Index, is a better measure of the cost. What we really should be looking at, though, is how the costs impact the students. Most students from families of modest income have to work to help to pay for college bills. And a lot of those jobs, whether summer or during school year, are for minimum wage. Thus, the most relevant question from a student's perspective would be, if I had a minimum wage job, how many hours do I have to work to afford college? In your presentation packet, there are charts included. I'm not going to try to explain them verbally, but there is a chart that includes answers for the school years comparing 1968 to the present and considering what a student working full-time in the summer, 40 hours a week for 14 weeks, and part-time during the school year, 12 hours a week for 36 weeks, would work about a total of 990 hours. Working full-time year-round would be 2,080 hours. Up through 1985, a student working this kind of summer term time could earn enough to pay for his or her own tuition, room, and board, most years with a decent amount left over for books, even if he or she were only making minimum wage. But that's not so anymore. The work equivalent cost has far more than doubled. For the most of the last 15 years, not even working full-time for the whole year would pay the basic bills at ISU. Another benchmark, in 1969, a full year of full-time work at the then minimum wage would have paid for a year at the pricey campus of Harvard University. In 2017, a full year, full-time, at the current minimum wage won't come close to covering the bills at the supposedly affordable public campus at ISU. Is it any wonder that student loan debt has skyrocketed? Now, state university officials will tell you that tuition charges at our Regent campuses are at or near the bottom of their peer groups, and that answer falls into the category of best of a bad lot. Like Iowa, other states across the country have also de-invested in public education. Tuition bills have shot up all around. Dante describes the 9 circles of hell. Is it any comfort that Iowa students are only on circle 8? So how do we find the money to provide the affordable higher education our students need to have a prosperous and secure future? The Future Ready Iowa Alliance has met over the last year and has identified many ways that our state's economy and workers need more skills and education. At the last meeting, I raised a question to Governor Reynolds of how she was going to pay for the efforts of the task force was planning. Her reply was that we would have to cut other state programs that were lower priorities. Okay, so then which are better investments? Throwing millions of dollars at corporate corporations in hopes that they might create a few new jobs are investing in our young people to give them the skills that they need to get and keep the jobs existing in Iowa businesses. With Iowa unemployment at 3.2%, the lowest in more than 15 years, we do not have a jobs problem. We have a skills problem and an income problem. As the Future Ready Task Force has discussed repeatedly, many existing Iowa businesses in Iowa have jobs that they just can't fill because they can't find the workers with the right skills. Are we spending our money in the right places? Under the High Quality Jobs Program, companies receive a state tax credit in return for pledges to create a certain number of jobs. The cost per job takes each company's total taxpayer subsidy and divides it by the number of jobs that they're supposed to be created in that company. A chart included in this presentation computes how many students' tuitions we could have paid at ISU this year for the same amount of money that would create just one job at the subsidized company. For example, for each one job to be created at Google, we could have instead have given 121 students full-time tuition scholarships at ISU this year. For the same high-quality jobs money as given for each one of the jobs to the controversial Iowa Fertilizer Company, we could have given 78 students full-time tuition ISU scholarships this year. Of the 12 total awards listed in this chart, the average taxpayer subsidized per one job is more than $250,000, enough to give 31 full-time tuition scholarships at ISU. So are we spending our economic development money in the most productive ways possible, subsidizing one job for one person or educating over 30 people for jobs existing businesses already have and can't fill? In conclusion, state policy should be guided by the following goals. We need to restore the state funding to the Regent universities at least back to the 2009 levels. This should be done within a fixed time frame via a cooperative agreement with the universities, under which the universities possibly agree to freeze tuition or at worst limit tuition increases to no more than inflation. Longer term, tuition income and state support should be rebalanced to no worse than 50-50. To help pay for this effort, economic development programs must be revised to set firm and much lower caps on the amount of taxpayer subsidy per job pledged to be created. Furthermore, the state must agree that stabilizing university funding over the business cycle so that the universities absorb no more than a proportional budget cut than any other type of budget revenue or line item. If this can be agreed to, by the legislature and the governor's office, then the Board of Regents should be able to lay out a contingent tuition schedule going out 2 to 3 years for each university in order to assist our students and their families in better planning for college costs. Finally, a permanent goal should be set to limit the total tuition, board, room, and fees costs to no more than the equivalent of 1 year's full-time work at whatever the current minimum wage may be. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for being here and for promoting this hearing. My name is Maria Betsabe Mantilla, and I am a graduate student in plant breeding at Iowa State University. I came to Iowa State University because the program of agriculture at Iowa State is one of the best, and it is part of the top 10 of the agriculture programs in the world. I came from Ecuador to receive the best education that the government of my country could pay for, because I came with a scholarship from my government to receive graduate education. I decided to come to Iowa State University because I wanted to be taught by the experts in the field of plant breeding and genetics. I cannot describe you with words the honor that I felt when I had my first class with Dr. Walter Fair, the expert, the one that wrote the book that every breeder in the entire world uses as reference. I have been also honored to receive classes from Dr. Bill Beavis and Dr. Yamin Yu, among other professors that are experts in their fields. even though I was admitted to other universities for my master's degree, including Wageningen University that is in the Netherlands and ranks #1 in the agriculture programs. I decided to come to Iowa State University because I was inspired by my major professor, Dr. Maria Salas. I was inspired because she was a Hispanic female scientist that made a place in a male-oriented field as plant breeding. And it was very clear for me that I wanted to be part of Iowa State University, not only for its excellent academic program, but also because of its inclusivity. I hope Iowa State University receives the support it needs to continue being an institution of academic excellence. I hope the experts in the field can continue being part of Iowa State University and can train all the Iowans, all students from other states in the US, and also international students. But furthermost, I hope that Iowa State University receives the support it needs to form and train the future experts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Questions? Okay.
Any questions? Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. It is afternoon now, isn't it? Yes. My name is Jessica Bell, and as president of the Iowa State University Professional and Scientific Council, I'm here speaking to you on behalf of more than 3,000 professional and scientific employees here at Iowa State. We, like faculty and students, are affected by the current shortfalls in funding that are required to maintain the quality of and continue to improve our educations here at Iowa State University. Professional and scientific employees have a variety of responsibilities across the university, from student affairs, academic advisors, research associates, assistant scientists, program coordinators, to veterinary specialists. I could go on. While sometimes not as visible as the faculty and the students, each and every one of the professional and scientific employees is of vital importance and incredible value to our university and to the Regent system. We each have a responsibility to assist in fulfilling the mission of Iowa State University, which is to create, share, and apply knowledge to make Iowa and the world a better place. We are challenged to complete this mission with diminishing resources. Doing more with less is not sustainable. Iowa State University needs to be able to attract, recruit, and retain professional and scientific employees who work to support student success, research, faculty, and the citizens of the state of Iowa. Iowa State University Professional and Scientific Council supports our university's efforts to develop a budget model with revenue streams that allow our university to thrive and continue to make Iowa and the world a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Tucker. I'm the Senior Vice President of Product Development at Workiva out here in Research Park. This summer, we have 59 interns working with us throughout the summer, 53 of those Iowa State students. We will typically, which is probably representative of an average year for us, we will typically hire 30 to 50% of those, a lot of it depending on how well I compete with Google, Amazon, Microsoft for those students. One of the things that we are able to do because of the caliber of students that we can find is we throw them right in with our product development teams. Every intern who is working in engineering with me, our goal is they commit code to production, and so they have code running in production before they leave for the summer. And many of them, then we try to keep throughout the year. We offer part-time opportunities throughout the year as well. It was interesting, I had a colleague from Google actually at our campus today, and we were talking about our love-hate relationship with each other as we compete for Iowa State grads. And it really has been a key part of what's been able to fuel our growth as a company. This has become my primary recruiting pipeline, has been interns converting to full-time engineers. We also hire a number of accountants. We hire a number of across other disciplines as well, food science, many disciplines throughout the university. What is critical to me is that Iowa State is able to do what they need to do to maintain that caliber of student. I want the students that I'm going to have to compete with Google and Microsoft for, and I think they've been doing a great job of that so far, and we hope that they can continue to do whatever they need to do to develop that level of student. Thank you.
Are there any questions? The research park that you're out in, that we have toured numerous times, is a fantastic park, and what you are doing for Iowa students and Iowa State students at the park and hiring them and interning them, you hire them because they're great quality, but the fact that you're here and part of our facilities and part of the hiring them is a great thing for Iowans and Iowa State University. So thank you so much, and keep that up.
Thank you. I will say I am also Iowa State grad who spent about 10 years in Silicon Valley and came back here because this is a great place to have and build a company. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I am Beth Wessel-Korshell. I'm the state representative from Iowa House District 45, so welcome to my district. I'm happy to have you here. As Senator Quirmbach said, we represent a lot of students, and I have a long history with the Regents, all three of them. I am very proud of what Iowa State University has been able to do on very limited resources, and I really appreciate what we've heard today about that. We've had such a fast rate of increase in students. I know the town has had a difficulty with traffic and providing services, and Iowa State has really stepped up to the plate. My dad is was an ISU grad. He wouldn't have been able to do it without the GI Bill, and I can't remember how much he told me his tuition was, but it was something like $50 a semester. And even that was a challenge for him and his family at that time, so he made it with assistance. I went to the University of Northern Iowa as an undergraduate. I came back here as a graduate student, so we are coming now full circle. My son is a rising sophomore at the University of Iowa, so I support all three Regents universities. What I want to say today is I don't want you to give up on the legislative and state support. I believe that there is a way for us to do this, and I believe it is our responsibility to make sure that young Iowans have access to an affordable education, and that is my goal. I believe we need to look at the budget that we have before us and find where we are misspending dollars. We are not in an economic recession, so we need to find where we are misspending dollars and revert those to areas that are our responsibility, and one of those is higher education. I feel bad that legislators are not showing up. Please call me, 515-451-4307. Text me. I am happy to meet with student constituents anytime, so it's 451-4307. Thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate you taking this very seriously.
And we really appreciate you being here, Representative. And I'll tell you one thing on behalf of the group of my colleagues here in this board. There's no giving up in this board, and we are going into a change period of time in the board that hasn't occurred as the universities are in years and years. And I know the legislature is doing the same thing. So as my father used to say, there ain't no giving up. So that's not happening here. Thank you for your presentation. Next.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Ruff. I'm the Executive Director of R&D for Behringer Ingelheim. I'm a 3-time Iowa State grad. I say that with pride. My wife has other opinions. She thinks I was a slow learner. But Behringer Ingelheim is a top 10 animal health company in the world. We're actually located in the research park. When you drive down Highway 30, if you look to the south, you'll see a brand new $20 million facility that was a partnership between Iowa State University, the research park, and our company. We've been here for 25 years, and we're here for 2 reasons. We call it T-squared, technology and talent. Talent, talent, talent. We have 75 employees, 40% of them are Iowa State grads, and most of those started out as interns in our company. We utilize both undergrad research or undergrad interns, graduate students, and of course research agreements with the university. We do that again for both the technology, but that's our access to talent. We get to evaluate them, train them, and utilize them before we eventually hire them. Those talents that they get at Iowa State, some of the technical things they could get at other universities, but we find that Iowa State provides a very strong agricultural and animal health background, which gives us an expedited jump start as we integrate them in the company. We have facilities in Shanghai and Germany that are also located by universities. In my words, those are city kids. They're a slower integration. If you've grown up on a farm, if you know animal health, and if you've been part of a land-grant university in which agriculture is important, those are very prized employees for us. So my message is very simple. Anything you do that impacts tuition and employment impacts us at the research park, and so again, like others, encourage you to consider any and all options to keep tuition low. I will give another plug to the research park. 70 companies, 1,700 employees, and $100 million in salaries, all in Iowa.
Thank you so much for what you do.
Hello, my name's Caleb Van Fossen. I was a student here at Iowa State, and hopefully I will be again soon. I came to talk about how the budget cuts and tuition increases will hurt me and are hurting other people I know. I was getting tuition assistance from Iowa Vocational Rehab Services because I have a disability, and they provide tuition assistance to help out people like me to pay for tuition. But last year it was cut by the state legislature, and I'm no longer receiving as much, so I can't afford to go back to school, and I'm struggling to find a way to do that. And I know other people in the same situation, and it's really sad and frustrating to see and go through. And this is a national problem. It's a crisis, really. And there are several countries around the world where students get paid to go to college. But here, college buries people in debt and traps them in poverty a lot of the time. And it doesn't have to be like that. It's pretty clear that a lot of the reason is corruption. I mean, if you look at the Board of Regents, I mean, there's good people on it, but a lot of people like the former president, Bruce Rastetter, are large Republican donors. It's a pay-to-play scheme, really. They donate to campaigns like Governor Branstad's, and then they get positions like that. Then they make decisions like increasing tuition on students and shifting the burden of funding higher education to us. And I believe it was last year, our former President Leith got a $320,000 bonus, making him one of the highest paid presidents, university presidents in the nation. And he made over $800,000 that year. It's kind of a slap in the face to me and other students to be giving those kind of bonuses and stuff to people at the same time that you're taking more money from us and increasing the cost of tuition for us. And I just don't know how people justify those kind of decisions. I'd just like to say it's really a slap in the face to the students. I know there's good people in the administration and on the Board of Regents, and I'd like to learn more about what they can do to help fix this situation. Thanks.
Thank you for coming, and one of the things that we'll try to do is to educate you on how that change is going to take place, and we appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Thanks.
Representative, it's your turn.
I really do. I am Cindy Winkler, State Representative, House District 90, which is Scott County. Davenport is and Buffalo are a part of my district. I had been appointed by our minority leader to be the spokesperson for the House Democrats in regard to the Regent tuition task force, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I did make some presentations at the last meeting, and I just wanted to add to that. I'm not going to repeat my comments, but as we've talked about the funding for the Regent universities, the FY17 net estimated appropriation is $56.1 million below, just in real dollars, below the FY 2000 appropriation. You are doing much more with less, and we certainly appreciate that. But that doesn't mean it is sustainable. And as a result of the lack of funding from the state level, families and students are picking up the burden. According to the comprehensive fiscal report that Robin Madison from our LSA helped put together, or helped identify, I would say, from 2000 to 2016 fiscal years, tuition and fees have increased by $661 million. Other revenue has increased by $30.4 million, and the total general operating fund revenues of our Regent universities have increased by $664.1 million. So here again, it shows that the majority of the increases in the general operating funds of our Regent universities have been borne by students and their families. And that should not be the case. Senator Kernbach identified the Future Ready Task Force, and they are projecting that in order to meet workforce needs, that we should have 70% of our our workforce age population, 25 to 64, hold some type of post-secondary credential, and we are currently sitting at 47%. We have a long way to go. So not only are we looking at the need to maintain our current situation, but in order to meet the workforce demands, bachelor degrees must increase by 31,000 over this time period to 2025 in order to meet the workforce demands. One of the major considerations needs to be a student's ability to pay. Certainly, education is a freedom issue. It is something that all individuals should have access to, and it should be, especially our public education. It should be affordable. Currently, for our K-12 population, statewide average of students receiving free and reduced lunch is 41% of our K-12 students attending our schools. It is 10 percentage points higher than just 10 years ago. School districts with the largest enrollment have over 50% of their population receiving free and reduced lunch. So these students are our pipeline. It is even more important then that we look at the students' abilities to pay. Currently, 2/3 of our students leaving the Regent universities are leaving with debt. Access will be an issue, not access as far as qualifications and preparation, but access according to cost. As the ability to pay decreases across our state because of increasing poverty levels in our state, we have to take that into consideration, and it's something that the state legislature should be looking at, as well as the Regent institutions. I want to talk a little bit about the need-based aid that currently is being appropriated by our state, and some of the slides were presented by Dr. Boone earlier. She mentioned that 81% of the approximately $70 million goes to independent, not-for-profit colleges and universities. My comments are not to be taken that we take that away from those students, but we do need to step up to the plate for our public school attendees. In the 2016 higher education report, the Iowa tuition grant, we appropriate $48.4 million. And there are 13,300 students that receive that grant. And you need to be attending an independent, not-for-profit institution in order to get that grant. Our All Iowa Opportunity Scholarship, which is the only scholarship that is directed to public institutions for a four-year degree. Also, community college students are able to receive that grant. They are able to receive other grants as well, but the All Iowa Opportunity Scholarship is basically the only public grant, is appropriated at $2.2 million. And so although there were 11,000 applicants in the FY15 school year, we were only able to give 427 grants. We have some work to do. One of the other things that I want to suggest that we consider as we move forward, and this would take change in legislative action, but currently we have dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment for high school students to take community college classes while they are still in high school. They receive college credit, community college credit, as well as receiving credit towards graduation. But in the communities that border our Regent universities, it would be wonderful to be able to open that up to Regent, for the Regents to offer the same thing, especially if you are looking at a four-year degree career. Right now, through our dual credit concurrent enrollment, there is about $17 million generated through our K-12 funding formula that then goes to community colleges to support those students receiving community college credit. This is not to take that away from them, but if you have your sights set on a four-year degree and are lucky enough to be in an area that has a Regent university where you could commute or have courses offered at the high school level, that might be something that we could consider with that four-year degree in mind. For a student who has the concurrent enrollment with the community college, certainly those credits transfer, but maybe they only transfer as electives instead of transferring towards a major in a four-year program. So just a piece of information. We've had those conversations briefly. None of my comments should be construed to take anything away from our community colleges or our independent colleges and universities. It's just a fairness issue in regard to the students who are attending our Regent universities and the access that they should have coming from the leadership of the state or the leadership of the Regent universities. Our investment in higher education is certainly, can be proven that there is a return on investment. The OECD identified that for every year a community gains in educational attainment, there is a 3.7% long-term economic impact for that community. So as we think about the goals of 70% of our working population having those degrees or credentials by 20 25, any investment that we make in our Regent universities, in our community colleges, in our higher ed institutions, has a return on investment to the communities that those individuals work in. Thank you for what you're doing. I am happy to work with you from the state legislative perspective. And we have challenges ahead, but I think that if we work together, we can accomplish great things.
Thank you, Representative, and all Senator Edler and Representative Kroschel. As you know, I'm a long-term Iowa Republican, and I will say this in front of everybody here. I have used the term apolitical in this process that we're leading here, and I sincerely hope that we maintain it apolitically from both sides. This is about our children and our grandchildren. This is about our future. This is about what we were educated in by our parents of the greatest generation. And let's all work together. What we've heard today from everybody here, and from you being here right now, kind of closing it out. Well, there may be others to present, but your presentation was great. And I've used the term, we're going to throw everything up against the wall. It's an old term that I've used, but we're going to consider everything, and this board is going to be open. Our leadership on the board has said we're open to discussion, open discussion, transparent discussion, and that's what you're leading to. I hope when you go back to your caucus, and I hope when Senator Edler goes back to his caucus, he'll report on the kind of things that we talked about today, and that we are going to be open and transparent, because this is important for all of us in Iowa for the future. So we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't mean to say that she was the last one. I withdraw that statement. Any other questions or want to present? We're getting close to the 1 o'clock timeline. For all the presenters that were here today, thank you so much. For everybody that came to listen this morning, I can tell you that our board leadership and our board members are very, very proud of our university presidents, very, very proud of the staff and faculty and the students and the student leadership of our universities. We wouldn't be doing this public service if it wasn't for how much we believed in what you do and how much we believed in supporting you. So our team's going to be there. And I think, as Representative Winkler said, quote unquote, we have work to do. And I highlighted that work here. We have work to do. And I think, as the President said, we've got work to do in the next several years. This isn't a project that's going to get out of the way overnight. So I've made some notes, and one of the notes was that change is here. We've got to be proactive. The board, the staff, the universities, all of us are prepared to be change agents and do this. And we know that it's going to be a project, and we know that politically there will be people that shoot from every direction. I've been there for years in the Senate, so I understand that. But let's do this with a positive and visionary positive go about this, as I've said. And I closed up at UNI with a learning to relish change, written by Susan Wheeler Johnson of the Association of Governing Boards that governs boards throughout the nation. And I thought this really fit what we're doing in our project here. And she said, and I'm quoting, "When the rate of change inside an organization becomes slower than the rate of change outside, then end is in sight." And this observation was from Jack Welch, the former CEO of General Electric, when he was making a presentation to his organization in 2000. And she goes on to say, and the board, AGB and the other boards are working on this, "Relish change, but it could be just as easily applied to higher education today. Higher education is facing an inflection point. 3 critical factors affecting its business model are changing simultaneously: who's going to college, what they are willing to or able to pay, and how they are learning." That's what we're all about on this Board of Regents, and I think my colleagues in Des Moines will be in the same way, and that's what they're about. So thank you all again today. I'm 3 minutes ahead of what I was at UNI, so we're finishing at 3 minutes ahead of 1 o'clock. So again, thank you all. And we are open to ideas. We're all open on this board. All of my colleagues are open on this board. This is a project we're going forward with. We'll be at the University of Iowa next Monday. And then in September, we will be presenting to the entire board out of our committee here. So thank you all, and we are adjourned.